Last night, Josh Allen, I thought, okay, I truly felt like the Bills could get it done last night. I wasn't going to put a lot of money on the Bills to get it done, but I put money on the Bills to get it done. They didn't get it done. But Josh Allen, again, just continues to run in to Patrick Mahomes and continues to get knocked out. I always get mad when people make excuses for the Steelers over the years. Well, keep in mind, they kept running into Tom Brady and the Patriots, and that's the dynasty that kept them out. They only ran into the Patriots one time. All right, in the last 10 years, or in the last, I should say 14 years, 15 years now, everyone that makes excuses for the Steelers, well, they run into the Patriots a lot during the Tom Brady era. They ran into Tom Brady once in the last 15 years in that playoff run. So to make excuses for the Steelers like that, as if the Steelers or the Patriots were holding them back the way Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are holding everyone else back, is just laughable. But get back on track, Kendra. I just had to take a side swipe at the Steelers for whatever reason. But Josh Allen just can't seem to get it done against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And it's not as if he doesn't play well. Was last night one of his better playoff games? No. But again, continue to get it done, whether it was with his legs or with his arm. It wasn't his best game. It definitely wasn't his worst. But he came up short. It didn't matter. They came up short. And no matter what no matter how well he plays, the result is always the same. He can't beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, no matter how good Lamar is during the regular season, no matter how many MVPs he has, whether it's running into the Chiefs or not, just can't seem to get it done in the postseason. Joe Burrow, when he's in the playoffs, by the way, every time he's in the postseason, he's in the AFC Championship game. I mean, he's been in the Super Bowl 50% of the times he's made the playoffs, which is wild. His problem is the team just hasn't been able to get back to the playoffs over the last couple of years. You look at these three names, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, they are right there at the top with Patrick Mahomes. Those are the four top quarterbacks in the NFL in no particular order, but I think those are the top four quarterbacks in the league. And obviously, when you talk about those top four names, results, Super Bowl results, that's the expectation. When you're that great, MVPs and Super Bowls, that comes with it. And we've seen Josh Allen come so close. AFC Championship game, they lose again last night. Lamar Jackson, possibly his third MVP this season, can't get it done in the playoffs. Joe Burrow, his best season as a Cincinnati Bengals quarterback this year, and the team missed the playoffs. These three are just battling uphill. They just can't seem to get it done. There's just constant, roadblocks in the way. And then here's Patrick Mahomes, who's just hogging all the Super Bowls, all the, individual accolades, all that fun stuff. But when you look at Joe Burrow, you look at Josh Allen, and you look at Lamar Jackson, which of those three quarterbacks, not of those three quarterbacks, who's most likely to win a Super Bowl, which one of those three quarterbacks is most likely to finish his career without ever winning a Super Bowl? I'll let you guys start. Which one of those quarterbacks is least likely to win a Super Bowl in their career?
I'm going to go with Josh Allen. I like Josh Allen. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's very, very talented. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Buffalo Bills are one of the best organizations in football. The same way I'm not going to pretend the Bengals are one of the best organizations in football. I do think the Ravens have a great organization. I don't know if that's going to, equate to a Super Bowl with Lamar, but I do think that gives Lamar the best chance right off the rip. I think Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Josh Allen. That gives him the better chance, in my opinion, than Josh Allen. Josh Allen then sits in a somewhat fine organization. He didn't have a ton of help. That was very evident last night. Mac Hollins was their leading receiver. James Cook was their second leading receiver. A running back and a wide receiver that respectfully probably isn't a wide receiver 4 on many teams. Those are your two leading receivers last night. I don't know if the Bills are ever going to be able to give him enough help to win a Super Bowl. I think Joe Burrow's got the talent. I think he's going to eventually get the help. I don't see it with Josh Allen. I think he's very, very good. I think he's a top 3 quarterback, no doubt. But as long as he's in Buffalo, he's not winning it.
Yeah, outside of those, clear top four quarterbacks in the NFL: Lamar, Josh, Joe, and Patrick Mahomes. And Mahomes obviously already has 3. He's going for a 3-peat now. I think it's Lamar who's least likely or most likely to never win one. I think, like you said, Joe has the talent around him. He's already been there. We've seen that he can do it in the playoffs. My thing with Josh, this year was supposed to be a wash. This year was supposed to be a rebuild year. Get back to retool after losing Stephon Diggs, retool the defense, losing both safeties, get back to where you wanted to be next year and beyond. And they just casually happen to be the 2 seed and make it to the AFC Championship. So as they continue to rebuild that roster, I have a lot of faith that Josh is going to get back to this point and hopefully over that hump eventually. My thing with Lamar Jackson is, what more can they give him? What more can we point to? He made it last year as the number 1 overall seed. He played the Chiefs in Baltimore with the number 1 defense left in the playoffs. They lost. They went out and got Derrick Henry because they said we didn't run the ball effectively enough. So they went out and got the number 1 running back in free agency, then they lost again. I don't know what else you can point to for Lamar to go get. First, it was weapons. Then they drafted Zay Flowers in the first round. They have Rashad Bateman coming on. They have Mark Andrews and Likely at tight end, best receiving duo at tight end in the entire league. I don't know what more you can point to for Lamar and say he needs this to succeed. I think with every other player in this conversation, Joe, you can say the defense and the O-line get better, and then boom, the Bengals are competitors or at the top of that mountain. The Bills, you say they get a number one wide receiver. We've seen what they've been able to do with Stephon Diggs. I know they weren't able to get to the Super Bowl, but they played the Chiefs down to a point where they scored the last time they touched the ball. So I still have a lot of faith in Josh. I just don't know what else you can add to Lamar to push them over that hump. I think he's had basically everything you need given to him, and he's been unable to get there.
So the reason I brought up at the beginning of the segment where we all just, Jake just assumed what I was going to say. He thought I was going to say Joe Burrow is the least likely to win a Super Bowl of these three. Jacob, I'm with you. It's Lamar Jackson. It's Lamar Jackson, and it's not for a lot of the reasons you said. Well, it's for a lot of the reasons you said, but there's one reason you didn't say that is the biggest one for me. I'll start with the other two of why I think they're going to have a chance. When Josh Allen's in the playoffs, his playoff numbers are phenomenal. He's fantastic. I know last night wasn't his best game, but it by far wasn't his worst. I mean, he had a chance to win in Kansas City on two final drives, and honestly, that last catch that throw was unbelievable. Should he have been scrambling out that far? Probably not, but that throw on the run, two defenders barreling down on him, that tight end has to catch that. It was in his hands. That's a separate conversation, but he makes plays in the playoffs. The moment's never too big for Josh Allen. I've never once watched him in the playoffs and thought, man, like the Josh Allen from the regular season does not translate into the playoffs. Josh Allen's as good in the playoffs as he is in the regular season. Same thing with Joe Burrow. When Joe Burrow's in the postseason, by the way, as a non-Bengals fan, I can't, of a rival fan base, Joe Shiesty, I can't stand all those nicknames, but I get where they come from because the dude's cold-blooded. The dude in the playoffs, the lights are never too bright, whether it's prime time during the regular season or the postseason. Joe Burrow shows up. I've never once questioned Joe Burrow in the postseason. The guy knows how to play in the postseason, whether it was at first when he was inexperienced all the way to now playing in the biggest and brightest lights, in the playoffs, making it to a Super Bowl, back-to-back AFC championships. As long as you have Joe Burrow and you can get to the playoffs, he's going to play at a level that you're going to have a shot. Same thing with the Bills. They had a shot last night because of Josh Allen, and that was the least amount of talent he's had during his time in Buffalo, especially a year after you lose, obviously, Stephon Diggs. Now, he's not playing with scrubs by any means, but those aren't, you have Joe Burrow saying, I need T. Higgins when you already have Jamar Chase, and then I'm watching Josh Allen do what he's doing over there. That's not a shot at Joe. I know it can come across that way, but like last night, I'm watching a team that needed a T. Higgins, desperately needed a T. Higgins, right? I trust Joe in the playoffs. I trust Josh Allen in the playoffs. I tell you who I don't trust in the playoffs, and that's Lamar Jackson. All the points you said, Jacob, are correct. What else more can you give him? He didn't show up in the postseason just this past year. He had a good game last year in the postseason and then had a bad game against the Chiefs in the postseason. Lamar Jackson's playoff numbers are not good at all. They don't even come close to reflecting the MVP numbers that he puts in throughout the regular season. So it's not so much about team dynamic in the postseason as it is which quarterback shows up in the postseason. Joe plays his best in the postseason. Josh Allen plays his best in the postseason. Lamar doesn't. I just don't trust him in the postseason. So of those three, who I think is most likely to never win a Super Bowl, just based on what we've seen from them individually, I think it's Lamar Jackson. I just have not seen him elevate his game to the biggest level, the highest level in the brightest lights, the way I've seen Josh Allen and Joe Burrow do on a consistent basis.
The other piece of the Lamar Jackson conversation that separates him from Josh and Joe Burrow in my mind is I think his window is much shorter. I think the level of play, the length that he can play at an elite level doing what he does great is much smaller than Josh or Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow's is by far the longest because he's not the most athletic. He's not the fastest. He doesn't have the strongest arm. It's all mental. It's all windows. It's all timing. And I think that's what's going to last a long time. That's part of why I know given, the franchise situation like you talked about, the Bengals are towards the bottom, if not the bottom. And usually that would put Joe Burrow out of this conversation or at least last out of these three. But I think the longevity of just the way he plays and what he's great at really gives him a leg up over both of these guys. I think Josh has a little bit over Lamar just because of the build and the being able to deal with a lot of that wear and tear of being a running quarterback. But I just can't imagine Lamar's going to be able to run around like he does for too long. I think it's going to last a while. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He might already be if he retired today. He's a phenomenal quarterback. But in terms of winning Super Bowl or Super Bowls, I think his window is much shorter than a lot of the other quarterbacks we talk about in this conversation.
I just think if you watch that playoff game against the Bills, he was down as number one wide receiver. Mark Andrews had two embarrassing plays that cost him the game. Lamar did throw a terrible interception. Outside of that one interception, I would say he played a pretty damn good football game.
He lost the fumble too. That's why I was
fumble.
critical. It was the 2 turnovers. That's why I was critical of Lamar. Like, when you turn the ball over twice in a big game like that,
Yeah,
I do put that on the quarterback too.
No, and I get it. I think Lamar did enough to keep his team in that game. I think it was Mark Andrews who I'm going to blame for dropping a wide open 2-point conversion to tie the game, and then Mark Andrews fumbled the game away on the other side of the field. That's who I'm going to personally blame. And 100% Lamar didn't do enough, but I did think he did. I did think he was good enough to not get the blame. The same way last year against the Chiefs, when I think it was Zay Flowers who fumbled it out of the back of the end zone or fumbled it at the goal line, whatever it was. It's just, I do think he's had a little bit of bad luck when it comes to the players around him. I'm not going to say he's blameless, because he needs to be better, but at the end of the day, my biggest takeaway from the Bills-Ravens game wasn't that Lamar wasn't good enough. That was not my takeaway.
Yeah, and by the way, we're saying all of it. I think all 3 are good enough to win a Super Bowl. I think that's why we kind of flipped it to which one's most likely to not win it when it's all said and done. But let's counter it too. Of the 3, who are you most confident in being able to win a Super Bowl, as far as that goes?
I'm going to say the guy that's already been there. I mean, there's 2 guys in a list of 3 that have never won a conference championship game, and there's a big bad guy in Kansas City who beats everyone every single year. So I'm going to pick the guy who's shown he can get to a Super Bowl. And I try to remove the homerism as much as possible. I'm going to pick Joe Burrow any chance you give me to pick Joe Burrow, but I feel like it's not crazy to lean Joe Burrow when the other 2 guys haven't been to a Super Bowl.
And by the way, our boss, Sean Spurlock, is in the chat. Making jokes about Joseph Burrow. Listen, I agree with Jacob 100%. The other 2 guys haven't been able to do it. They haven't. And if you're unable to see it, seeing is believing. I've seen Joe Burrow beat Patrick Mahomes.
There.
And it was 21-3. It was 21-3 in that game.
He's also beaten Josh in the playoffs. There.
So he did beat the Ravens, not Lamar, but he did beat the Ravens. So I'm going to take Joe Burrow. When he gets to the playoffs, I think he's the scariest quarterback outside of Patrick Mahomes.
To be fair, y'all cheated to beat the Bills. You wore those white jerseys in the snow.
That's right. Yeah, no, away teams haven't been wearing white uniforms for decades.
The Chiefs
shout
have the
out
officials.
Bills fans.
Yeah, the Chiefs have the officials, and you have your, whiteout jerseys.
We have the NFL uniform office.
Yeah.
There you go. Look, again, I think all 3 capable of winning a Super Bowl. I don't want to get into an argument with you guys. I'm gonna roll with Josh Allen. But this is
why would you say Josh Allen?
Because, and this is where it risks us getting into a back and forth. Anytime I can see a quarterback elevate talent around him, and do not get mad, I haven't seen who has Joe Burrow elevated around him that's not elite already. I think it's a fair question. When you look at Josh Allen, he doesn't have a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins. He doesn't have built-in elite talent around him already. He is, the names he's going out there and winning with are drastically different than what we've seen. When if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins aren't on there, is he elevating pieces around him the way we've seen from Josh Allen already? I know Joe can win with talent. Can he do what Josh Allen did this year and go out there with guys that aren't at an elite level and go win as many games as he did, win a division, and get to the AFC Championship game? We haven't seen that, but you're right. We've seen Joe Burrow get to a Super Bowl. We haven't seen the others be able to prevail and do it, especially when Kansas City's the one that they can't seem to get past.
I don't know. Mike Gesicki, I think, had almost a career year here probably, and that was with, honestly, half the season, him not being utilized at all by the coaching staff. Once you started utilizing him, Mike Gesicki, nobody's saying he's a top 15 tight end, top 10 tight end. He certainly looked that way when he had to be here. I think Joe Burrow gets a little bit of credit for that. And I also think you can't knock Joe Burrow for the talent that he has on the roster. I think T. Higgins, if he goes to the Jaguars, I don't think that he has as good of a season with the Jaguars as he does in Cincinnati. So I think Joe Burrow absolutely is a part of the reason that Jamar and T. Higgins are as highly regarded as they are. 100%. Joe Burrow gets a little bit of credit for that.
I think it's fair to a degree that we just haven't seen it from Joe, and we've seen it from Josh in terms of asking them to elevate poor rosters, at least offensively. My thing is, if we're talking about who can win a Super Bowl, Are you just expecting Jamar and T to leave Cincinnati? I mean, if Joe has that talent with him, then isn't that part of the conversation? I guess in terms of who you like better, Josh or Joe, I think that then you can definitely bring that in. But in terms of who can win a Super Bowl, I think the expectation, at least in my mind, is Jamar's going to be here Joe's entire career. I don't know about T. Higgins. That's more of a coin flip. But, yeah, Joe succeeds great with elite weapons. And my expectation is that he's going to have elite weapons at least for the bulk of this Super Bowl window, if you can say we're still in one. So I think in terms of this conversation of winning the next Super Bowl, I think that is a plus to the Joe Burrow side of things, not necessarily a negative, because, Josh and the Bills, they tried to attack that wide receiver one, taking a first-round wide receiver this year, and maybe it works in a year or two down the line, but Keon Coleman certainly hasn't looked like that so far. So you can dump high draft capital, you can dump money. They traded for Amari Cooper, a guy I know you love so much, and he hasn't quite panned out in Buffalo. So I think teams are always trying as much as they can say, we're happy with the guys we have in the locker room. We're happy with, Josh can elevate everyone we have here catching passes from him. And though that might be true, teams are always chasing that elite wide receiver one. And then as soon as they think they have it, they'll go chase that elite wide receiver two. I think that's something that teams value, and especially with elite quarterbacks, something they're going to try to hit on in the draft. So the Bengals have it. The Bills are trying to get it. In terms of who can win a Super Bowl first, I'll take the team that doesn't have to navigate through getting a weapon first.
Yeah.
Now that's fair. And look, the bottom line is it's not like the Bills, it's not like Josh Allen is like, I don't need weapons, don't get me weapons. He wants a T, he wants a Jamar, he wants that. He wanted Coleman to be. And by the way, that is pretty damning in the Bills organization that they traded that pick to the Chiefs, who got Xavier Worthy, who balled out last night, and you got Keon Coleman, who, by the way,
remember they traded him the Mahomes pick too, right? I feel like we don't talk about that a lot. Bills traded pick 10 to the Chiefs for Mahomes.
That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.